Imagine for a second the sheer weight of history just shifting, literally in a single heartbeat. 2 entire centuries of foreign rule, starting with the corporate grip of the East India Company and then the direct rule of the British Crown, just vanishing overnight. On August 15th, 1947, nearly 400 million people woke up to a totally new reality. We're talking about a monumental geopolitical earthquake here. This was the birth of independent India. The sheer gravity of that moment, it was captured perfectly by Jawaharlal Nehru. Standing before the Constituent Assembly, he said, "Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom." Wow, right? I mean, that wasn't just some poetic speech. That marked the exact legal transition on the midnight between August 14th and 15th, 1947. That's the literal second India officially became a sovereign nation. So that brings up a massive question. How exactly did a nation of 400 million pull this off? To really wrap our heads around the euphoria of that midnight assembly, we kind of need to rewind the clock a bit, because this absolutely was not some sudden overnight victory. It was the climax of an incredibly long, grueling journey of resistance that spanned multiple generations. The road to 1947 was essentially almost a full century of escalating pushback. It really kicked off back in 1857 with the First War of Independence, which is also known as the Sepoy Mutiny. Then, jump forward a bit, and the institutional groundwork gets laid in 1885 when the Indian National Congress is formed. And as we roll into the 20th century, man, the pressure just mounts heavily. You've got the non-cooperation movement launching in 1920, the iconic Salt March in 1930, which was this brilliant challenge to British monopolies, and then the massive Quit India movement in 1942, literally demanding the British exit immediately. So by the time we hit the official transfer of power in 1947, August 15th, was really the ultimate crescendo of 90 years of continuous struggle. And it wasn't just one single method that won this freedom. It was more like a collision of powerful forces coming together. First, you had the relentless political organizing by the Indian National Congress. Second, Mahatma Gandhi steps in and transforms the movement into a mass popular revolution through nonviolent resistance, satyagraha, and huge economic boycotts. That really exposed the moral vulnerability of colonial rule. But alongside that, there were intense, revolutionary, physical, and intelligence pressures from figures like Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, and Subhas Chandra Bose with his Indian National Army. And finally, you have to look at the global picture. By the end of World War II, the British government under Prime Minister Clement Attlee was just economically exhausted. Add in rising military disloyalty like the Royal Indian Navy Mutiny in 1946, and honestly, holding on to India by force just became completely impossible. Okay, so this brings us to a really fascinating historical mystery in this explainer. Why was August 15th chosen? And why did this massive transfer of power happen exactly at midnight? I mean, think about it. Midnight is a very specific, kind of weird time for a huge administrative handover, right? Well, the answers are actually pretty surprising, and they mix global geopolitics with very local tradition. So Lord Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, was the guy mandated to oversee the transfer of power. Originally, this whole thing was scheduled for June 1948, but he drastically hit the fast-forward button. He deliberately picked August 15th because it coincided with the second anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II, which was a huge milestone from his own military career. But why midnight? Well, when Indian astrologers actually looked at the calendar, they declared August 15th to be a deeply inauspicious date. No good. So, to navigate this, they came up with a pretty clever workaround. The Constituent Assembly convened on the night of August 14th, allowing the transition to happen right as the clock struck midnight. Boom, the perfect compromise between political urgency and traditional beliefs. Now, here is another piece of trivia, and it actually sets up a much heavier part of our explainer. Why do India and Pakistan, which were literally born from the exact same legislative act, celebrate Independence Day on different dates? Pakistan on the 14th and India on the 15th. So the Indian Independence Act of 1947 officially partitioned British India into 2 independent dominions. Pakistan was created on August 14th, with Muhammad Ali Jinnah as its first head of state. India followed the very next day, on the 15th, keeping Lord Mountbatten as its first governor-general. The reason for the different dates, it's purely logistical, actually. Lord Mountbatten had to personally attend the transfer of power ceremony in Karachi, which was Pakistan's original capital, on the afternoon of August 14th, and then quickly rush back to New Delhi for India's midnight ceremony. But guys, while the political victory here was absolutely immense, the territorial division, it came at an unimaginable cost.
14 to 15 million.
That number right there represents the devastating human cost of this division. The new borders were hastily drawn up by a British barrister named Sir Cyril Radcliffe, who divided the regions of Punjab and Bengal along religious lines. And this rushed partition triggered literally one of the largest forced migrations in all of human history. Up to 15 million people were uprooted from their ancestral homes overnight. This sparked horrific, widespread communal violence across those newly drawn border regions, and tragically resulted in hundreds of thousands of lives lost. So you have this incredibly profound, heartbreaking contrast, right? Soaring political triumph happening in the capital cities, directly juxtaposed against a grim, bloody reality unfolding on the ground. Keeping that immense tragedy in mind, let's ask another question. Where was the main architect of the freedom movement, Mahatma Gandhi, on August 15, 1947? You'd naturally assume he was front and center at the glorious celebrations in New Delhi, right? While the truth is deeply poignant, Mahatma Gandhi was completely absent from the New Delhi festivities. Deeply anguished and saddened by the violent partition of the subcontinent, Gandhi actually refused to celebrate. Instead, he spent Independence Day in Calcutta, then Calcutta. He spent the entire day fasting, praying, and just working tirelessly to try and restore communal harmony among the rioting communities. So while others celebrated the dawn of freedom, Gandhi was mourning the violent fracturing of the land he had fought so hard to unite. Out of the ashes of that partition, this newly independent country had to build its structural foundation from scratch. It required truly visionary leaders, the architects of the new republic. You have Jawaharlal Nehru, who established the nation's democratic vision and secular governance. Then there's Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, the deputy prime minister. He led this monumental diplomatic effort to integrate over 560 autonomous princely states into one unified Indian Union. Imagine negotiating that. Then there is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, chairman of the drafting committee, who ensured the new nation was anchored in equality, fundamental rights, and the legal abolition of untouchability. And crucially, leaders like Sarojini Naidu and Hansa Mehta, who fiercely championed women's rights, making sure that universal adult suffrage was woven into the very fabric of the republic right from day one. Now, what's really interesting about this era is how many of the national symbols we just take for granted today weren't actually in place yet. For instance, do you think the Indian national anthem was officially played on Independence Day? The answer is actually no. While the song Jana Gana Mana, which was composed by Rabindranath Tagore, was sung during the Constituent Assembly session, it was not the official anthem yet. It was only formally adopted as India's national anthem on January 24, 1950. That's just 2 days before India formally transitioned into a sovereign democratic republic. I think this perfectly illustrates how the ceremonial and legal frameworks of this massive new nation were still actively taking shape well after that initial midnight hour. But why does all of this matter to the rest of the world today? Well, because India's independence wasn't just some localized transfer of power. It was the definitive beginning of global decolonization following World War II. The exact moment the British lowered their flag in New Delhi, the foundational economics of European empire building were permanently dismantled. This massive, successful civilian struggle served as the ultimate blueprint for anti-colonial movements that very soon swept across Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. It completely shattered the aura of imperial hegemony, forever. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty profound question to reflect on. How does a nation balance the ultimate triumphs of sovereignty with the permanent scars of a divided land? The story of August 15, 1947, is really one of duality. It is the breathtaking victory of 400 million people achieving their freedom through decades of sheer resilience. And it is the deeply sobering reality of massive displacement and loss. It is a tryst with destiny that irrevocably changed the modern world. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the incredible history and legacy of this pivotal midnight hour.